There we go. So welcome. Thank you all for taking some time this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about my mindset. Lori talked about challenges and changes in people's careers and lives and all those things. And that happens to us both personally and professionally throughout our lives. And, being able to deal with those things and land on your feet and move forward is really part of what, my story is, my mindset about how to deal with that. And how I actually look at business and business success. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds on my background. Lori gave you a little hint about what my career looked like and what brought me to EOS and why I do what I do and love doing what I do. And then I'm going to walk you through what EOS is at a high level, just to give you an idea. Again, it's really an opportunity to educate people because people have heard about it, sort of know little bits. For people to really have a better understanding is always helpful to the people that may be able to benefit from the tools that we teach. So the mindset I talk about, and one of the things that I came to early in my career, just personally and professionally, is to understand that in order to do anything well, you really have to have the mental rigor to clearly define what you want to do. Because if you don't have any goal, if you don't have a clear expectation of where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, you really don't have a game plan, can't have a game plan on how to do that. Secondly, you really have to be willing to show up every day, put one foot in front of the other and work at it. Put in the reps, we say, to make sure that you're actually making the effort. Having a goal is wonderful, but if you can't make the tire hit the road and actually move things forward, it's really not worthwhile. And the key thing is, one of the things I learned early on as a theater manager, and I spent 30 years in the movie theater industry, but, as I said earlier, if you show up every day and you systematically work towards a goal, putting one foot in front of the other, that works. But if you just let the world wash over you, then you don't get ahead. And I realized very early as a theater manager that running movie theaters is not rocket science. It really isn't. But I realized the thing that was helping my career was I came to work every day and I tried to fix one thing. I either helped an employee be a better salesperson selling popcorn, or I fixed something in my building, or I did something every day that helped the business get better. And you do that 300 days a year and things move forward. But it's not like you have to have a home run every day. Go to work and hit singles, and that's okay. So if you can define your goals, if you are willing to show up every day, then you can do anything you want to do. I truly believe that. You're talking to a guy that used to be 100 pounds heavier, and I didn't gain that 100 pounds in a short period of time, but one step in front of the other, quite literally walking, I was able to lose the weight and get my health back. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, and every time I've had a health issue, it's amazing how quickly your body deteriorates, and you have to build it back up. So, you have the goal of getting better, and you put one foot in front of the other. It's the same in business. So, that's what brings the passion in what I do, is the ability to help people understand what their goals are and give them a platform on which they can actually show up every day to make their business life better. And if you're better in business, it bleeds over to your personal life. You're better at what you do at home. So quick overview. Yeah, I started out, for anybody that was in Philadelphia, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Sam Eric Theaters. I was an usher right out of high school. I did everything in the movie theater industry, from selling tickets and popcorn and cleaning theaters to the projectionist, to every level of management up to chief operating officer. And I worked for Lowe's Theaters for 17 of my 30 years in my movie theater career. AMC comes along in 2006. I was out in Michigan working for Lowe's. I expected to retire with Lowe's. AMC bought me in my career for the third time, and my career at Lowe's ends. So I end up moving to post Katrina, New Orleans. I got recruited by a theater chain down there. It was a startup chain called Southern Theaters. I worked for them for 2 years. And then lo and behold, the Great Recession. And I, one morning in August of 2008, along with the chief operating officer, I was VP of operations, we got called in and told, can't afford you anymore, guys. Thanks for moving to New Orleans. But here's your severance package. Thanks. So, which was, I had been there 2 years. The chief operating officer literally closed on a house 10 days earlier. I mean, the COO, 10 days earlier, bought a house, moved, you're out. Anyway, so, what do you do next? So back to the drawing board. I looked around. There's no money at the Great Recession. People are 1 million jobs a year, a month are shedding from the economy. There's no place to work, no money to start a business. So what's the goal? I had to figure out what I'm going to do next. So, my recognition that the hospitality industry was filled with opportunity, or would be filled with opportunity, based on my skill set of multi-unit management, operationally focused, customer service, all the things I've done in 30 years, very transferable, not necessarily to Chescafé Event Group, but understanding my goal became, how do I build credibility to be able to land in a senior level management position in hospitality in 2 or 3 years, whenever the recession's over? So what are the steps and what are the reps? What do I got to do? How do I put one foot in front of the other to get there? So that's me. That's me and my whites as a line cook, because, I decided that the best way to get credibility in hospitality was to get a culinary degree. So, that gave me the ability to go into any food service operation with being able to say, not only do I have these management skills, but I understand how a kitchen works. So I went to culinary school in New Orleans, great place to learn how to cook. I always had a passion for cooking. So there was a side note that this was a little bit of fun for me at age 48, but also at age 48, there's me in my whites, going from $150,000 a year white collar job to making $8 an hour, which was okay. I financially could afford to do that. I spent 4,000 hours over the next 3 years working as an apprentice chef at Nola in the French Quarter under Emile Lagasse. He wasn't there, but he owned the restaurant. And then under John Besh at the American Sector in the World War II Museum. So in the 3 years that I was in culinary school, I obtained a culinary arts degree, a catering degree, and a food service operations bachelor's degree. So, the goal was to build my bona fides for hospitality. And I ended up landing as chief operating officer of a $25 million catering company in downtown Philadelphia, the Chescafé Event Group. That's Joe Volpe, the owner and CEO. And I spent 2 years there, learned a lot, had a great opportunity. We did 15 weddings a week on average. I've went to more weddings and have had the experience of so many different kinds of weddings, ethnicities, backgrounds, takes. It was amazing, but I don't ever need to go to a wedding again. While I was there, I was exposed to Vistage peer groups, and ultimately became a Vistage peer chair for the next 4 years. And I was exposed to EOS. I had the great privilege of working with a world-class EOS implementer by the name of Hank O'Donnell. And Hank came to us at a Vistage meeting, and we decided to implement and use this system in the catering company because, frankly, I was struggling running a 400-person family-based business with levels of accountability. They had built this business from literally a garage. As you hear many entrepreneurial stories, we were 10 years into it, and I was hired to build out infrastructure to move the company forward. So this was a great tool. I then left the catering company. I hung out my own shingle under the Leadership Hub and spent 4 years as a Vistage chair running a Vistage peer group, which I enjoyed, but it didn't have an operational component. And back when the COVID pandemic hit, I lost a third of my group and to companies that just contracted or went out of business because of COVID. and decided to go back to my operational roots and my love of systems and operations, because that's really what I did my whole career. Even though I was in the C-suite, my focus was always operational. So I went back and got certified as a EOS professional implementer. And so now we're on to what the heck is EOS? EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it really is just that. It's an operating platform. You know, we in EOS assume that you are, as an entrepreneur, selling the right product into the right market, because if you're not, we can't help you because we're an operational platform. It's really just an integrated system of simple tools, things that you probably have heard pieces about or used in your own business. The appeal of EOS as an entire system is that it has incorporated these many levels of business tools into one integrated system, providing a platform for entrepreneurs who, you know, we all know the entrepreneur who has a great good product or a service. Either they started, invented it, or they're just better at executing on it, they believe, who suddenly look up and have 10, 20, 30, 50 employees working for them and realize, oh my God, I really don't know how to be functional at running a business of this size. I'm really good at repairing elevators, and I built an elevator repair company, but I don't know how to manage a business and structure for 20, 30, 50, 100 people. It's just not there. So we're industry agnostic, and we are able to put this operating system in place and help people overlay their industry business with all their know-how into this system, which is going to give them accountability, prioritization, goal setting, all of the things that companies struggle with that help them to grow and be more efficient and get more of what they want out of that business. So that, in essence, is what EOS is. And it's was built by a guy by the name of Gino Wickman, who wrote the book Traction. Excuse me. And Gino was an entrepreneur early in his life. He was called in at age 25 to run his family business. He worked and ran that family business for 7 years, started by having to turn the business around, spent 3 years turning the business around. He ran the business for 7 years and then sold it. The whole time he was doing that, he was a founding member of an organization called EO, the Entrepreneurial Organization. He's a founding member in the Detroit market. So when he sold his business, he realized that he really had the knack and passion for running truly entrepreneurial companies. And he decided to cobble together what we now know is EOS. And since he's done that, he and myself and about 450 implementers around the world have done more than 90,000 full-day sessions with more than 12,000 entrepreneurial companies. So this has grown from him to now 450 of us out there doing this worldwide. So what is EOS in practical terms? EOS is based on a model, and I'm going to walk you through that model at a high level. It's based on a model that realizes that every entrepreneur has, 136 things floating around in their heads. There's always all these things going on. They're being pulled in multiple directions. And what we found is that if you just focus on these 6 key components, which I'm going to walk you through, that all of those 136 things fall into place or really go away because they're symptoms of things because you're not able to organize your business well. So we're going to start with, first and foremost, the vision of your company. It's amazing how many entrepreneurs I talk to and ask them where they want to be in 5 years. What do they want to accomplish with their company? And I get dead stares, frankly. They have a vague notion that they want to grow, but they don't really have a plan. So one of the really important things that we start with is helping people to really define what it is where they want to go and how they're going to get there. Okay, sorry. This high level here. The second piece is people. You got to have the right people for your company, and we're going to give you the tools to define what that is. Third is data, making decisions based on metrics. I'm going to run around the model real quick, and then I'll go back and dive down a little bit for you. The fourth thing is issue solving, problem solving. A lot of times companies are paralyzed because they don't know how to effectively problem solve. Fourth is codifying and documenting processes, getting things out of people's heads so that when Joe quits, wins the lottery, or dies, the system is written down someplace at a high level and it's easily teachable and trainable and measurable and all those good things. And then finally, traction is really introducing discipline and accountability into the organization. Now, these are the 6 components at a high level. And again, I'll do a little bit of a dive into the tools that we use for each one. But what we really do is we look to strengthen these 6 key components. That's the journey that we take as implementers with all of our clients. You know, ideally, you think utopia, you're going to strengthen them all to 100%. The reality is we're looking at a continuum. We're trying to get you 80% strong, and we measure that strength in a scientific and subjective way along the process so that as we work, you can see the growth within the individual components, where you're strong, what the tools are that you've used and how they've strengthened you, and how you're getting to where you need to be. If we can get you 80% strong in each one of those 6 categories combined, you're going to be running on all cylinders. The company is going to be much more efficient than it ever was. The reality is most companies are running about 20% strong in these 6 key components and making money in spite of themselves. So that's the overview. That's really the goal, is the 80% strong. I'm going to give you a little bit of a dive into the individual components. So first we start with the vision component, and the vision component really is, and this is where my personal and professional background really draws me to this, is what's the goal? What's the vision? And I use the analogy all the time of you get in a car and you need to drive someplace. And that gives you the ability to make decisions along the way to whether you turn left or right on a road so that you know where your endpoint is. If you're driving to Cleveland, you know how to get to Cleveland because you know what the end goal is. Your team can get to Cleveland too because they know what the end goal is. If you're just in your business without an end goal and you haven't defined the direction, you're just out for a drive. And that's the analogy I use. You got to know what the end point is when you get in the car, or you're just out for a drive. So you can't really be successful. You can't have people working for you help drive your business in any direction if they don't know what the end point is. And it's not their fault. They're going to make decisions that are easier for them, that are best for them, that are going to keep things moving and make their life okay. And that's not a criticism of them if you as an owner and senior leadership team haven't told them what you want them to do and where to go. So you got to get people from driving in circles, and you got to move the team, get everybody rowing in the same direction. And that's really one of the beauties of EOS is we teach the leadership team the tools. They then teach the teams below them how to do what they need to do, how to use the tools, get everybody pulling in the same direction. And if you've got a 50-person organization and you've got everybody focused on the same thing, you really get some traction in your business. So the key is we answer 8 questions. And we answer those 8 questions on a document we call the Vision Traction Organizer, which I'd be glad to share with anybody. It's a great tool. It's a planning strategic tool. It's not a 50-page 5-year plan. It's really a high-level entrepreneurial plan that we obtain through spending time answering the 8 questions that will help you define what your vision is. And then the key is, again, you got to share it with your team. It's amazing how many times, even if the entire leadership team understands where you're going, the people don't know what the company is about, where they're going. How do you keep people engaged? How do you keep them active? How do you keep them wanting to work for you and not look for another job? Well, you do that by engaging them in your vision and where you want to take the company and what you want to accomplish. So you have to actually get people in a room on a regular basis and have that discussion. Make sure they're clear on what your goals are, where you're taking the company, what's your goals for the next 90 days, the next year, the next 10 years. You got to share that information. That's how you get 100% strong in the vision component. And we talk about the 8 questions. What are the 8 questions? We define what your core values are, and that's really important when it gets to the people component, because you want people who share your values. Those people that you like to be around, that are about the right things, that are about the things you want your company to be about. You got to define what your core focus. Too many entrepreneurs are all over the place. They can't stay focused on what their mission is. They try to be all things to all people, and they fail because of it. We set a 10-year target. What's that big picture? It could be 20 years, could be 5 years, but what's the big overriding goal of your company? A lot of people, again, I talk to them all the time. They don't know. They haven't really decided what that is yet. Once we have the core values, the core focus, and a 10-year target, we can define the marketing strategy, for the company. We paint a 3-year picture, and we call the picture very intentionally 36 months from now, because that's not a lot of time in the business world. What's your company actually going to look like? If you can visualize that as a leader in your company, and you can tell that story to your leadership team and the people you're working with, your chances of reaching that goal are greatly enhanced. So we paint that 3-year picture. Then we take it down to bite-sized pieces. In order to reach your 3-year picture and your 10-year target, what's your 1-year goal? Give us 3 to 7 goals that you have to accomplish this year in order to meet your 3-year picture, your 10-year target. Quarterly, we set things called rocks. Rocks are really just priorities. What are the priorities? What are the top things that your leadership team and your company have to accomplish in the next 90 days? And we work in a 90-day world in EOS because human beings have a hard time staying focused for longer than 90 days. So a 90-day world looks something like this. You go to work every day, put your head down, you run your business, you deal with customers, you sell your products, you execute, you do everything you do normally. At the end of 90 days, you stop, you put your head up, you look back. What did we accomplish in the last 90 days? Are we on track with our vision? Are we still heading in the right direction? And what are we going to do in the next 90 days to move the football down the field? So the leadership team gets rocks, and everybody in the company ultimately gets rocks. If you can accomplish your top priorities, the top 3 to 7 priorities as a leadership team every quarter, think the kind of traction and accountability in a company can move forward. And then finally, we have an issues list. Remember those 136 things going on in your head? Well, part of this structure is we want you to write them down. We don't want you to forget them, but we don't want them being up here swirling, confusing things. So that issues list is basically a parking lot. So what this answering these 8 questions, and we do this over 2 days, we really dig down, we give you the thoughtful time to answer those questions, and you leave there having a clear understanding of what your company vision is, where you're going and how you're going to get there. So you start there, you're heading along a continuum, you're driving towards your 10-year target, and we break it down into 90-day increments, really easier to think about. You know, when you say that big 10-year target, EOS's 10-year target right now is to work with 100,000 companies. We don't know how we're going to get there. 2020, we hit our 10,000 target. We're at 12,000 now in 2021. That's still 88,000 more companies that we as an organization have to find worldwide. That means minting more people like myself, spreading the word, doing the marketing, getting it out there. So we don't have a defined exact plan, but we know what we're going to do as a company in the next 90 days to help move that forward. So we work in 90-day bites, towards our 1-year goal, towards our 3-year picture, driving us to getting everybody on the same page towards our 10-year target. And that's really a big component of EOS, is getting it clear on where you're going and how you're going to get there. The second component is the people component. Really one of the most important components as well, because you can't build a great company without great people. We're all aware right now about all of the things going on in the workforce. where there's not enough people and you're losing people. And part of the vision component, as I mentioned, is getting your workforce engaged, because it's a hell of a lot easier to keep people than it is to find new people. So while you want to have a clear vision that you can sell to future employees, keeping people that are on your team currently engaged is really important. So one of the things that EOS offers as part of its tool package is helping you define who the right people are and what the right seats are. So right people means that they share your core values, and right seats means they're doing the right job within your organization. And you got to have people doing both. They got to be the right people, they got to share your values, and they've got to sit in the right seats. So we provide the tools by defining your core values to be able to measure and be able to have that conversation with the employee. We use a tool called the People Analyzer, which allows you to rate your employees against your core values and whether or not they actually get it, want it, and have the capacity to do the job you have them in. Okay. 80% of problems in entrepreneurial companies start in this component. If you can get the right people sitting in the right seat, it makes an amazing difference as to your success. Next step, that's how you get 100% strong, right people, right seats, 100%. The next component's data. And, we find a lot of entrepreneurial companies make decisions based on emotion, based on gut, because they start with an entrepreneur in a lot of cases who had to do everything for themselves, and they're making decisions based on their instinct, on what feels right to them. And ultimately, as you grow an entrepreneurial business, you have to start making decisions based on metrics, because it's really easy to say, I have an opinion, but everybody's got an opinion. So if we're going to base our decisions on an opinion, the owner's always going to make the decision. If you make a decision based on metrics and numbers that are clearly defined, it becomes a lot easier for people to be able to make a rational, logical decision rather than an emotional one. So we help the leadership teams build out a scorecard, understand the process, because the scorecard gives them something to look at on a weekly basis. It gives them a snapshot of their business and allows them to be able to define whether they're on track or off track. And that's really the focus of a scorecard, because we give them 13 weeks of data for every one of their metrics. So you can watch the trend if something in your sales pipeline is going off track, or whatever metrics important within your business is heading off track. You can fix it before it becomes a major problem or ingrained in the monthly P&L. So you're able to take proactive measures to run your business better. So the leadership team has a scorecard, the operations team has a relevant scorecard, the finance team has a relevant scorecard. Every team within the organization or department has its own scorecard and metrics to keep them on track. And we use measurables, which are individual metrics. Everybody in the company should have a measurable of some form or fashion to know how they're actually contributing to the overall success of the company. It again goes to engagement. I can be a frontline worker in a restaurant or a movie theater or any industry. I could be the receptionist answering the phone. My measurable might be as simple as I answer the phone before it rings a third time. If that measurable helps me to give better customer service, I know I'm contributing to the overall success of the company. So getting your scorecard straight, making sure everybody's accountable for something, that's how you get 100% strong in that component. Now, once you understand what your values are, you have the right people in place, and you're making decisions based on metrics, your entire operation becomes much more transparent. And the issues, the challenges, the opportunities within your organization become much clearer. So we have a component, we call it the issues list. The issues component, which is made up of a list, and these are the short-term things that are there that you're facing challenges. And we teach companies how to serve up problems, challenges, and opportunities on a regular basis and solve them, because so many companies will work around problems. Well, we'll deal with that later. It clogs up the arteries of an entrepreneurial company. We teach people to prioritize on a weekly basis. What are the things that are most important for you to solve to move your company forward? And we give them a process to do that. One, we start with the list so that everybody's aware of what these things are. We come together weekly, we prioritize what they are, and we start with the most important issue each week. And we use a system called issue solving track, or IDSing, and that's identify, discuss, and solve. A lot of companies get together and talk and talk and talk and talk, and they never really solve anything. First and foremost, they don't solve anything because they don't really dig down and identify what the problem is. And we teach that you spend 70% of your time really digging down. What's the root level of the problem? Okay, because somebody says, I got a problem with Mary Jo in accounting. Well, you got to figure out what the problem is with Mary Jo. It's not just Mary Jo. Just because somebody puts something on a list, you got to define what that is. 70% of the time you're together as a team working on an issue is finding out what that core problem is. Then we discuss it at a high level. And I say high level, meaning everybody on the team that is having this discussion gets to weigh in. They don't get to repeat themselves because that's politicking. What's best for the company in this decision-making problem? And then we solve it. We come up with a solution. Now, a lot of leadership teams get paralyzed because they can't make a global problem solve. World hunger is a problem. You're never going to get in a room and solve it through discussion. What's the piece of the component of world hunger that you can solve that can move the problem down the field to the next first down? So we teach leadership teams, not only do they not table problems, not only do they duct tape them, not only do they not work around them, but you can solve a problem just enough to move it down the field for you. Okay, doesn't have to be a global fix every time you come together, but don't be paralyzed by not being able to make improvements each and every time you're faced with this problem to move the ball down the field. So we give people a good way to solve problems because that's really an issue in entrepreneurial companies. Keeping your issues list, giving the culture the ability to raise your hand and say, look, I got a problem at any level in the organization, and it goes on an issue list in a department, at the leadership team level, at a frontline team level, somewhere, and it gets solved on a regular basis. And that's how you move an entrepreneurial company forward. That's how you make it strong. The process component is really fairly simple. Most companies have a handful of core processes that need to be defined. And you define the best and right way to do those processes, and you document them at a high level, at a simplified level, at an entrepreneurial level, where you identify 20% of the process that moves you 80% along the way. Because if you write a 700-page SOP manual, no one's going to read it. It's never going to be done, and it's not going to be helpful to anybody. But at a high level, if you document, most companies, we can document their processes in 15 or 20 pages. And that's HR, that's accounting, that's sales, that's marketing, that's operations, that's customer service. Those major components of your business, it allows you to teach it then. It's not in Joe's head. And if Joe's out, we don't know how to do the process. Everybody that touches the process can understand it. You can measure it. You can scale it. You can execute it on the best and right way because you've already decided what that is, which makes it more profitable and, frankly, less of a headache and more fun to do. So if you document the process and you teach everybody to make sure that it's being followed, and part of your metrics and part of your scorecards within the departments that you have are going to measure that your processes are in fact being followed. So that's how you strengthen the process component within a company, and that's how you move them forward. And finally, the traction component. And you'll see the traction components at the bottom of the wheel. That's where the rubber meets the road. And traction is really discipline and accountability within the organization in two components. One is ROCks, which I mentioned already. It's the 90-day mindset within an organization that we're going to operate for 90 days. We're going to prioritize what that is. At the leadership level, we do 3 to 7 ROCks every quarter. And then every member of the leadership team has 3 to 7 ROCks. At every level below that, ultimately, when we roll EOS out through a company, everybody should have a ROC every quarter. So I meet with a leadership team on a quarterly basis. We set rocks. What are the company goals? Here's what we're going to accomplish. You go out and announce that to your company. Everybody's clear on what the company goals are. The following week, the departments get together and go, okay, we now will know what the company is going to accomplish for the next 90 days. What are the priorities within our department that are going to support that to help move the company along the line? So if you've got 50 people accomplishing at least one major process or project within their department or area of control every 90 days, think about the amount of traction and movement you can move in a company moving it forward. That's getting everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction. The meeting pulse is where we do our problem solving. Every week, the leadership team comes together for 90 days. We teach them a great process where they take a snapshot. They get to look at the status of the rocks. They get to look at their scorecard. They get to report in on customer or employee issues. They talk about what's going on in their business professionally, what's going on in their lives personally. We spend 20 minutes just checking in, snapshot. Everybody's on the same page. Okay, now we can spend the balance of our 90-minute meeting problem solving. And it should be the most passionate, productive time of a leadership team every week coming together, being able to solve problems to move the company forward. So that's the traction component. Every department's going to have some version of a meeting every week. It could be a 15-minute meeting on the back of a pickup truck for a construction company. It could be that simple, as long as 10 minutes of it is solving the problems that are relevant to that group of people. And that's how you strengthen that component. And those 6 key components together make up EOS. And if you use the tools in an integrated process, and we tell people when we work with them, if you want to work with an implementer, especially, you really need to commit to spending the time and using this as an integrated process. If you just decide you're going to use the VTO and answer the 8 questions, that's going to help you, but it's not going to get you the amount of traction that's available within the organization. So we ask them to commit to the entire thing. And what's it like to work with an implementer finally? And we walk them through this every time we meet with a potential client. We do a 90-minute meeting, which is a more in-depth introduction to EOS than I just gave you. And what we do is we talk about EOS and myself, a little background. I spend about 15, 20 minutes with the leadership team trying to understand, their challenges, their strengths, what they're doing, where they've been, what they're trying to accomplish, what their vision may look like in their heads, even if they haven't figured that out. I take them the bulk of the meeting through the tools at a deeper level than I've done today. And then I take them through this process so they understand what it's like to work with an implementer. So we spend 3 days together over 60 days with a new client if we decide to work together. And we start with what we call the focus day, and that's a full session day with the leadership team. We say 7 hours plus or minus an hour. And in that 7 hours, we do the following things. We give structure to the organization. We teach them 5 tools that are going to help them break through the ceiling whenever they feel stuck. Hitting the ceiling is lack of growth, either personally, departmentally, or as a company. And the tools that we teach you that first day and we use throughout our EOS life helps people get through that ceiling that they hit inevitably in any company, in any career, anytime you're working professionally. We take a pass at getting their structure right, the accountability chart, with getting the right people in the right seat, especially on that day, making sure the leadership team is the right people. I've come out of leadership days or focus days where we walked in and the head of operations that started the day is no longer head of operations, or the person that is in charge of running the day-to-day operation of the company is new, because the defining what the right roles and the right people are based on having the right structure is so important to moving the company forward. We set rocks for the first time. We prioritize what's got to happen in the next 60 days. We teach how to do a good meeting pulse and what the leadership team, what that looks like. So When they walk out of the focus day, the following day, they can start executing the tools that are going to help moving their company forward. Okay. Then about 30 days later, we come back together and we start answering those 8 questions. We do another full day about 30 days later. We've laid a foundation with the tools. Now your function's happening. Now we help you answer those 8 questions so you can clearly define what your vision for your company is by answering those 8 questions. We usually spend the first part of the day recapping what we did in focus day so everybody's clear. And then we usually answer core values, core focus, and 10-year target. That's a full day. I did one of those yesterday with a team. Approximately 30 days later, we come back for vision building 2, and we answer the balance of the questions. We spend the first part of the day reviewing everything you've learned to date. We then go through marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan. We review the rocks that you set in your focus day, and we look at your issues list. And then we simply go into what is a normal execution mode for EOS. And we call it quarterly pulsing, where every 90 days, I come together with the leadership team and I facilitate their meetings for them for as long as they need me. Now, our engagements usually last for clients for about 2 years or 8 fiscal quarters. In that time, we feel that most teams learn the tools well enough that they're able to do this by themselves. I don't try to embed myself in companies for the rest of their lives. I teach the system. My role is coach, facilitator, and teacher. I am not a consultant. I don't know anything about the demolition company or underground mechanical services or signage or any of the other businesses that I deal with, and I don't need to because all that knowledge is in the business. What I do is help them facilitate a structure on which they build their business. And that's the process. Some of our clients, about 40% actually keep us on forever because they like the accountability of having a facilitator come in and run their quarterly meetings. But my goal as a facilitator is to get everybody up to speed and graduate them. And if they choose to stay with us, great. If not, they should have the tools to go do it themselves. So ideal clients for EOS, entrepreneurial companies, 10 to 250 people, leadership team that's open-minded. When I'm sitting there doing a 90-minute session and I'm learning about a team, I'm trying to get a sense of what the team's like. If everybody's afraid to open their mouth because the CEO is answering all the questions and driving the entire company and everybody's afraid to speak, tells me a lot. Maybe not an EOS company. They got to be willing to be vulnerable. They got to understand that they don't know everything. They got to be willing to say that out loud. I had a CEO early in the process say to me, I'm 36 years old. I've got a $7 million construction company. I got 35 employees. No one taught me to be a CEO. I need help. That's the kind of person I love working with because they understand they don't know everything and we can give them some support in doing the things they know how to do well. And finally, they're afraid of the status quo. Things you're going to hear that might make you perk up about EOS is they're stuck. They've hit the wall. They're just not getting the things out of their company. They don't feel in control anymore. They're working a lot of hours and they just can't make things happen. They're frustrated because their team's not on the same page. They don't have the control that they feel they once had. The company's grown away from them. So we work to give them the control back. Growth and profitability is often stalled. So they're the things that you hear. They're the companies we work with. That's the overview of the business. Thank you for taking the time to listen to it. Thank you, Beacon, for allowing me to give the opportunity to explain what I do. And I am open to any and all questions about EOS that anybody is interested in providing.
Brian, I've got a comment. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Taylor. No, Taylor, go ahead.
Just a question, Brian. In the ideal world, what should the composition of the management team look like? And what level of position?
We work with the leadership team. We say to people to set that up is that who are the people in your organization that are going to move your company forward in the next 6 to 12 months? That usually includes the person that runs the day-to-day, that keeps the company heartbeat going, that make sure that the different departments are working together, removing obstacles. That person's accountable for the P&L. Very often it's the visionary and founder of the company. Sometimes it's somebody in the role of COO, which is below the visionary. And then we have at least the bare minimum. You have to have somebody from sales and marketing, you have to have an operational component, and you have to have a finance component. We say less is more. 4 or 5 people's about the limit we try to look for, because much more than that becomes too many people in the room. And we give people context and say, if you had to downsize your business by 40% of your staff, who do you want in the room? Which really limits that, because what we're trying to build is a leadership team that's cohesive and healthy, working together. And you can't be limited and afraid to speak your mind by having the wrong people in the room. So you really have to have the core people in the room. And when we start looking at the leadership team, I fire them all. We start that exercise by saying, you're all fired. You're now all on the board of directors. We're starting with a whiteboard. What's the structure first for your organization? Tell me what the structure is before we put names, titles, roles, anything. We build that out. And it's amazing when you have an open and honest team, and I watch this happen many times, because you have people who come into the room like the head of operations. When you ask the questions, do they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do the job? The head of operations said, I don't want this job. I didn't want this job when you gave it to me. I was just number 2 employee. I'm now number 1 of 50, and I'm there. I'm stuck doing this job. He's never going to be effective for that leadership team. So it's really important to have the visionary / integrator, we call them, or the founder / COO person, could be the same one. And then sales, marketing, operations, finance.
Got it. Thank you.
Brian, what's when you look at your engagements, what are, the top 2, 3 problems you're solving? And I know every company is a little different, but I would assume there's probably some consistencies. What are you fixing or putting these companies back on the rails? Maybe you can kind of share that. I think that will be helpful too.
Sure. The biggest one is vision. And I worked with a company yesterday. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And it's a family business. Father, 2 sons are in the business. Dad's 67. He's going to retire at some point. They always talk about dad retiring. So we need to figure out what the company's going to do. But, the big ha-ha for them, and the big takeaway from our focus vision building day yesterday was, where's the company going? What's that clarity look like? Because there's 4 people in the leadership team in that company. Everybody has a little nuance of what they think it's going to look like, but they now have a 10-year target. They understand what their goal is, and it's to be a $50 million nationwide company. They're now only in the Northeast. They understand what that big picture is. They can talk to their team about that. They define what they're about as a company, their core values, and they decided exactly what their focus needs to be. They're a demolition company, and they do specific work in the demolition field. They just don't have wrecking balls come in and tear down buildings. They do things like asbestos removal. They tear down power plants where there's contamination and all kinds of stuff like that. So they have a very specialty field. But they're only, once they defined it, they only were doing 70% of their business within their core focus. They were taking on other business for a very honest reason. They said, well, job came this way, it was money, we took it. So that's okay if you would recognize it, but helping them understand where their focus was, and if they want to now become not just a Northeast-centric business and they want to go nationally, they now know where to spend their marketing and dollars and their sales time, because they know what they're going to focus on nationally. So number 1 is, where are you going? What do you want to be when you grow up? And we jokingly say that. What do you want to be when you grow up? He's 67. What do you want to be when you grow up? So the second piece of that is getting the right structure, again, especially in a family business, because the family dynamic is sometimes the challenge in any entrepreneurial business. and getting people to be clear on, when you start a company with 1 or 2 people and you add and you add and you add, and you're now 30 people, very often the lines of what you used to do and what you're doing now are blurred. So you may have everybody have a little hand in sales, may have a little hand in marketing, may have a little sale in operations. Clearly defining the 5 key things that everybody's responsible for so they know who's doing what. You can support somebody else in another department, but at the end of the day, you got to know whose hand to shake or whose throat to choke. Okay. And it's really important. So if we are able to help people clarify their business, where they're going, how they're going to get there, and put a structure in place and teach them how to put that structure in place throughout the organization, those are the top 2. Third one would be how to run a good meeting and problem solve. Those 3 things, you're making big impact on any company.
Yeah, Brian, I would say one thing. I've been involved quite a bit in engagement studies with teams and with companies, and I would say probably the single biggest area where you can have an impact is when the leadership shows vulnerability. I mean, you say right away you go in and right away there's a distrust. What's this all about? Regardless of how good an organization you have, there's always a little feeling of distrust. What are they up to? And once the leadership shows vulnerability, one of the best ways to say, we're going to do a sensing survey or something to see what the issues are, and then to come back and feed that back to the employees. You said management has this problem, or what, and this is what we're willing to do about it, and so the willingness to show action, but vulnerability in that action is really important. Yes. I mean, that's been my experience, very important to get off to a great start.
Yep, absolutely. And we work, we talk about building healthy and strong teams. Strong is how do you run your business? All the things you do day to day. How do you build the better widget, sell the better widget? That's strong. Companies are mostly pretty good at that. They don't need EOS to do that. What they don't have is the healthy component, and that's the open, honest communication where you're able to say, and that's really amazing to me that I found, and it's so showing and telling. When you sit in a room with 8 people, one of my first engagements was 8 people showed up to the meeting. And at the end of the day, there was 5 left on the leadership team. And they were able to express openly and honestly and say to each other, you know what? I think you have made great contributions to the company, but you're not the right person to sit in this seat and be accountable for this role within our company. And it was taken with the honesty, the humility, and the best interest in the company at heart. And that's how it was received. And it really helped that company get a real clear understanding of what their leadership team looked like and how they were able to move the company forward.
My experience has been once they show that vulnerability and they're really committed to doing something, the employees that have self-directed teams on their own come in and work off hours or whatever it is and, pay that price. It wasn't always going through the clock. And it's just amazing. Once you get that trust factor in there, it's very powerful. At least that's been my experience.
Yep, I agree with you. Absolutely. Makes a big difference. Any other questions, folks? Anything else I can tell you?
I think
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead,
So Brian, I'm curious, and we've had these discussions before, but when you talk about your ideal client, is there a type of client prospect that you find is not ideal? Like I'm imagining, the prototypical entrepreneur has some ADD all over the place, pivots all the time. Maybe this might be too structured for them. Like, oh, I've got to do the 90-day meeting, but I got all these other things. I have to do this meeting right now. Like, is there, do you find in your experience and travels that, when you meet with some of these young CEOs, like you say, well, that's not a fit, you probably need something else that's not as structured, or, maybe in their minds it's rigid, whatever, because they need to be able to be much more flexible, let's say. And, I need to travel. I can't do my 90-day meeting. The 10-year plan, I mean, that pivots, I can't even think of 10 years. I mean, I can't think of it tomorrow.
Yep.
Understanding that they might need that, but that they just can't get their heads around it.
Here's a great example. The catering company, we failed EOS. And I say we failed EOS. I loved it. Many of the senior leadership team loved it. The owner, Joe, who's a great guy, who is that shiny key entrepreneur. We all know those entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs at heart are problem solvers, and that's their attraction. They like to fix things. They like to make things work, is my experience. So Joe, the owner, understood that he needed he needed a system. He needed to move the company forward. He was always looking for that better way to do it. So, I got hired to come in and help with infrastructure because they're not a family business anymore and they wanted to grow to a much larger organization. Things like, the finance systems, the HR systems, the operating systems, et cetera. All those things I put into place while I was there. And using EOS, we set our goals, we set our rocks, we did all those things. And then he got bored. And, our core focus was high-end weddings, which I said we did more than 600 a year. Next thing I know, he's buying a Wahlburgers franchise, the hamburger joint. Next thing I know, he's buying the rights to run a concession operation in Franklin Park, Ben Franklin. I'm like, what are you doing? We're trying to grow our business here. We've all agreed that this is where we're heading, and we're taking 40% of the company time, energy, assets, human capital, and focused on running a hamburger joint. How is that helping us? And, God bless him. He finally said to me, this EOS stuff, this is all good, but we're never really going to do all of this. I'm like, Joe, thanks for the insight there. Love you, but I'm out of here. So myself and about 50% of the leadership team left. And he's still in business, God love him. But to answer your question, you can't always tell that up front. But we do find sometimes that structure is too constraining for some entrepreneurs. And in my experience, they just hit their ceiling and can't get any bigger, because if they're not willing to embrace the tools that are going to help them stay focused and help their team stay focused, they can't grow any more than they already are. So Joe and I are still, we're still get along, we still converse, and, I wish him the best, but he'll be the first to tell you that he couldn't live under those constraints.
Just as a follow-up to that, so if someone's 10-year goal is to make a bunch of acquisitions, they're not sure what kind of acquisitions, they can't name the companies or maybe even the industries. Like, that's a pretty pivotable goal, right? Because maybe that what would have been his goal, but how would you incorporate that into an EOS system? Like, we want to make acquisitions, but we don't know necessarily.
Our core focus was to grow the high-end wedding catering company from Philadelphia to East Coast. It wasn't high-end wedding catering venues. We were flirting with franchise model, so that we could, we knew how to execute weddings. We were doing 5 a day, 3 days a week, at minimum, most of the year. And we had that down to a system that was functional and profitable. And we were going to take that system and grow it and go to Washington, D.C., and Boston, and New York, and Baltimore. Well, that's a great core focus for our business. And that was our sweet spot. Hamburger joint, just because he had the opportunity near one of his venues, and he had a buddy who had the franchise rights and we had, the infrastructure in place to support that franchise, didn't make any sense. It really wasn't part of the core focus, which is why we defined the core focus up front. What do you want to do? What are you good at? And then it gives you the lens to be able to make decisions about acquisitions. Now, yes, 10-year targets can change. You can reach those 10-year targets and set new 10-year targets. But at the end of the day, along the way, you've got to be able to have you and your team driving towards the same goal. And if it's a high-end wedding catering company, cookie cutter franchise model that you're trying to build out, Wahlburgers isn't obviously part of that. And, and you can, it doesn't say you can't do it. It just says it's really not your core focus. And when you ask why you're not moving as quickly as you are, there's your answer. It's pretty self-evident. Well, thank you, folks, again for your time and your attention. If you know of anybody who meets the criterion or you think could be helpful, I love doing 90-minute sessions. I'm doing one this afternoon down in Vineland for a electrical contracting company. I only ever look for the opportunity to do the explanation. I don't sell EOS. By the way, we have no contracts. We have no engagement letters. I get paid my fee at the end of each working day. And I get that with a guarantee that says, if you don't get value for the work that I bring to you each and every day we're together, you don't pay me. There's no contract. You make no commitment for 2 years. At the end of the day, you like the work I do with you, you pay me, and then we come together again. And that's the only guarantee I have. I bring value to my clients before I get paid, and I get paid at the end of every day I work. So it's really a straightforward, open and honest conversation. Nobody makes a commitment. The only loss that anybody has to have with working with me is giving up a day, because they're not obligated to pay me if they don't feel like they get anything out of it at the end of the day. So that's the best I can offer anybody, is you get a freebie with me for a full day. If you don't like it, don't continue. Don't pay me. And I will
Brian,
be.
thank you so very much.
One thing, Anthony, I'm going back to the accelerator. I don't know whether you noticed I was on your LinkedIn profile. My own scorecard is hitting on the board members for the accelerator program for introductions moving forward over the next 3 months. So I'm going to really be taking advantage of that opportunity within the accelerator program.
That's why we have it. It's, we're a networking organization, and the accelerator program is designed to, to take that to another level. So,
yep. Thank you.
If there's anyone on the call that wants to learn more about, we call it business accelerator. You could use another word called sponsorship, but if anybody wants to ping me about if they have any interest in it, we feel like there's a lot of value behind it. And so one of the perks is that our business accelerator partners get to do these kind of presentations 2 a year. And so Brian's going to have another one, on maybe a different topic or so forth. But the idea is to showcase the members, I would call it expertise and knowledge. And so, years ago, we used to try to go after organizations, and we took a different step, and Taylor's been involved in this, and we made a decision. Let's make this offer to our members and see if they want to take advantage of it. So Brian, thanks for being a part of it. I sent you an email. Give me a call, because I wanted to just share some feedback with you. And then
Absolutely.
But anybody on the call, if you want to connect, my whole thing is what you cast out, you get back. So if there's anyone in my network that, that would make sense for you to meet, I'm happy to bridge that introduction. So that's what networking is about, right? So so there's a couple folks on here I'm not connected to, and I sent some I sent LinkedIn invitations, but that's the beauty of this organization. So Brian, thank you for being a part of the accelerator and sharing this information. And it was a nice job. Well done.
How about your contact information? What did you say? I know you said if we want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
I think he just put it in the.
I just added everything to the chat.
Oh, okay.
My phone number, my email. Actually, I didn't put my email. I put my phone number, I put my website, and I put my calendar. Here's my email.
Good.
Thank you, Brian. And if you would please send to Zoe your presentation so we can get that out to everyone as well, so they can have your slides, your process would be excellent. And I think for me, one of the best takeaways is that it works for any industry, any size group. Although you have a sweet spot of 10 to 250 employees, I know I have encountered so many times, especially entrepreneurs who think that they have all the answers and are creative. And if you build it, it will come, which we know doesn't necessarily work. So thank you so much for taking time with us this morning, and especially given that you had some health issues that took up a bit of your time. We really appreciate your making time for us and sharing a roadmap that we can all use for success no matter what we do. So I thank you very, very much. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you better as well.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.